Thank you for tuning in to Tuesdays with Andrea podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Rios McMillan, and this is season 3, where I like to speak with inspiring guests who are sharing their light, their insight, and their knowledge to strengthen our community and uplift humanity. Today, I am welcoming Judge Bianca Camargo. She is recently appointed by the Illinois Supreme Court to fill a circuit judge vacancy in Kane County. She's one of 5 women to serve as a circuit judge in Kane County and the first Latina circuit judge in the history of Kane County. She's also worked as a prosecutor for the Kane County State's Attorney's Office and a graduate of Northern Illinois University College of Law, where she also received her undergrad. She now lives in Aurora with her husband, Armando, and their 4-year-old son. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Likewise. And the reason why this is important to me to have this interview with you is because judges wield an enormous amount of power. And I think that judicial elections are often overlooked, especially in presidential election years. And I think that voters have real power, but we don't often know the enormity of power that we have. In any given year, there's up to 60 plus judges that are elected in Cook County, for example. In Kane County, we have a large judicial system, and some of these judges are elected, some of them are appointed. So I'd like to better understand from you how the judgeship works, who gets on the bench, what you do, and just get more of an understanding there, because I think that the judge position is a bit mysterious to the public. And so I'd like to open that up and offer more transparency, as well as to get to know who you are as a person. What is it that formulates your drive, and how did you get where you are? What does your background look like, and how could someone like me relate to you? And for the audience, what can they take away from your journey? What snippets or insights can be useful and practical as they're driving down the street or running and doing whatever they do as they listen and watch this podcast?
Sure.
So that's what we're going to talk about. So let's talk first about your history. Let's go all the way back. Were you born in Aurora?
I was born in Aurora, and when I was born, we lived on the east side of Aurora. So I lived on Pierce Street, and that was I lived there until I was about in 4th grade. I really enjoyed that neighborhood.
Wait, Pierce Street? Where is that at?
It's so if you're on Broadway and you make a left on Pierce, it's by so it's like Pierce, and then the first intersection you would get to is Pierce and High Street.
High Street, yes. Mm-hmm. Because I grew up on Woodruff Street. It's like a 5-block street in between High and Ohio.
So that's Pierce right there. No. So, yes.
Where?
It has to be.
I lived on Front Street, so.
Isn't that crazy? Oh, also, guys, I want to point out that we have a production assistant, Janine Areola. She's been helping me so much with the podcast, and so she is going to be the voice of God. You might hear her in the background. She is helping with all of the logistical operations. Would you like to say hi?
No. Oh, that's funny. I think that's one of the side streets off of Pierce, and so think about the time frame there. I wasn't really aware of like the streets surrounding me. I just knew I lived on Pierce Street. Yeah. But we would follow, when me and my sister, we went to Hermas Elementary, which is off of Jungles. Mm-hmm. And what we would do is we'd walk to school. So I remember the path still clearly, how we would get to school. And, sometimes I hate to admit that it happened more often than not. My parents had this like jar of coins and dollar bills. Sometimes we'd sneak a couple dollars, and after school, when we were walking back, we'd stop by Banana Split.
Oh yeah,
and pick up a little cone, and we would.
I knew you were going to say something. Dairy Delight.
I know there's a huge argument in Aurora whether it's Dairy Delight, Banana Split. Someone tried to throw Overwise in there, but I was like, that's North Aurora.
Dairy Delight, I got you back. Okay, if you want to come on here for an interview, I got you anytime.
Then you're going to get Banana Split. We'll come together. Let's settle the debate.
Yeah, we'll have a taste test.
The Tomcat cone.
Oh, I like that. That's a good idea.
A blind taste test.
But I think it's interesting. So we grew up all within the same, mile radius of each other. And then now you're a judge appointed by the Supreme Court of Illinois.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and it all started.
My roots started in East Aurora. So that's why.
Okay. And you have 2 siblings?
I do. I have an older sister and a younger brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're the middle.
I know, the middle child.
The achiever.
Well,
is that the classical achiever?
No, the one that gets blamed for everything. Something breaks in the house. It was Bianca.
You. Yeah.
But I actually did break it. I was very mischievous when I was younger. I would break stuff and then I'd hide it. And my mom would find it like, you did this, right? And I'm like, She was like, yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. I'm like, I did. Very much got blamed for everything. But, I was lucky. I had an older sister who, went through, high school, and I kind of followed in her footsteps, took her guidance, and then I was able to help my brother out, get through the system and make sure that he knew the right steps to take.
So what did your parents do when you were growing up?
So when we lived on the east side, my mom and dad, they owned a small business in Aurora. It was called Slim Image. It was like an exercise place. And my mom ran that. And it was right on Farnsworth, next to where the McDonald's is, close to the intersection of Indian Trail and Farnsworth. Mm-hmm. And so we grew up there, me and my sister, like the women would come in and work out on machines, right? So there's a workout place right now, and I can't think of the names. But it's like you sit on a machine, or you're laying on a machine, and it like lifts your legs for you.
Oh, the elliptical?
It wasn't an elliptical. It was like a bed, but then you just put your legs there and the machine would lift your legs for you. So
they would do all the work for you.
It would do all the work for you. But it was so funny because the women would be like, honey, can you press the button for me? And I'm like, yes, I can. Like I would hit the button and we'd play with the machines. Obviously, my mom hated it. So my parents had that, but my dad, he was a factory worker. He worked at Johnson Controls for a long time. And then I think there was a point in my parents' life where they were like, we got to do something more here. My dad, decided that factory work just wasn't going to give him what he needed and the opportunities that he needed to provide for his family. So he decided to look into becoming a union electrician, and so thankful to the unions for giving him that opportunity. So what I saw from my father is that he started, he was still working as a factory worker. And then at night, he'd switch his lunchbox for his backpack and take some night classes at Wabansie to up his math skills so that he can get into the apprenticeship program at IBEW Local 461, so the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And they took a chance on him and they let him into the apprentice program. And he was there for 25 years. And I'm so thankful to the unions. I'm a proud recipient of the benefits that the unions gave my family. They gave us an opportunity. They gave my father opportunities that trickled down to us. They were able to put him in really good job sites where, the unions are sitting there, they're taking care of the American worker. And like I said, that all trickled down to us. And because he was given those opportunities, he was able to save for our college. But, we moved from the east side to the west side, and we got into different schools. And unfortunately, we also left the east side because it was becoming very violent in that area. And so I think that was another factor that my dad considered is I need to provide for my children, but I also have to get them out of the violence. That area became very, very violent. Yeah. And so we moved to North Aurora, and I started in the West Aurora school districts. And so, my dad's, struggles and his sacrifices were benefits for me and my siblings. And same thing with my mother. I mean, my mother worked 2 jobs for as long as I can remember. And, there were times where she would leave the house at 6 o'clock in the morning and not come back till, midnight. And I didn't see my mom. And I used to hate that. Why can't you just be here? Why can't you be at my soccer games? I later realized in life that she wasn't there because in order for me to play soccer and pay those fees and the uniform fees, she had to work an extra job. And, again, those were things that I didn't feel. I didn't feel those sacrifices until I was much older. And I was like, I get it now. I get it now that you were doing all of this for us.
So did that help you in terms of education and staying on track with your studies? Because what drove you then to go to college and then law school? Was that always part of your original goal?
No. So my parents instilled education in us from a very early age. And unfortunately, I didn't take advantage of that advice until my senior year of high school, when I started thinking it's about to get real. What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? And so I didn't have parents who went to college who were able to, guide me like, this is how you make the application. These are where you go to get letters of recommendation, like the people you would want to write letters, how to fill out FAFSA. I didn't have that, but I had something else. I had 3 parents who had instilled hard work, dedication, and determination. And those values, I carry those to this day, and they've served me so well. So I was lucky, though, that I had them backing me. I just didn't have the resources to do it. And so I remember I went to my guidance counselor when I was at West, and I said, I see everybody's applying for college. I think it's time for me to apply. And she said, college isn't for you. Here are some trade books. Here are, there's a factory. It was LTD. There was a lot of kids that were going to start, doing factory work. And I decided that's not my life.
You're like, nope, the factory ain't for me.
Not that I looked down on anybody who, it was just, I knew that I needed to do more. So, I know you've heard me kind of talk about the noise. I try to flush out the noise. And the noise is people telling you, you can't, you won't, you shouldn't, you don't even dream that dream. I keep a little piece of that with me even now, and I'll never forget it, because those are the people that also gave me drive. My parents, they believed in me so much, which gave me the courage to believe in myself and to fulfill my dreams. But that little noise that I keep with me also drives me. The people that don't believe in me, the people that think I shouldn't be here or that I won't make it, they also give me the courage and the push and the drive to do the things that I need to do. And I was lucky enough. I got myself into Wabansie, and I did my 2 years there. And at that point I was playing soccer for Wabansie. And so if you were an athlete, you got hooked up with a different counselor. And I was very lucky to be with that counselor, because she guided me, and she was like, listen, if this is what you want to do, these are the classes you take. And she kept me on track. And I'm so thankful for her, because, it's easy to get sucked in with people that are misdirecting you. And then your 2-year college stint turns into 3.5 years or 4 years, which is a delay, So I was lucky enough to transfer it to Northern, and I'm very grateful for that experience as well. And it was a good experience, because I was going to school full time, but I also was working full time. And I was working at Home Depot at the time, and I really enjoyed that job because they gave me a lot of flexibility. They also gave me a lot of leeway, like, go work at the cash register all the way at the end so I could study at the same time. But these experiences that my parents instilled in me, this hard work, right? You want to get your college degree. It's not going to be easy. But you have to work for it. And if you can work for it, then it's going to happen. And so kind of going back to, did I think I was going to go to law school? Actually graduated with my undergrad degree, not knowing what the next step was going to be.
What was your major?
Sociology.
Yep. Yeah. What do you do with the sociology major?
You got it. So that area of study gave me so much passion. Like, I loved it. I loved learning about how people interact, about institutional racism, all that stuff. I loved it. I did well because it interests me so much. But then what do you do with a degree like that, right? So I was lucky. Right as I graduated, they posted a position at the Kane County State's Attorney's Office to become a victim advocate. And I was lucky to get that position.
How did you find the position? Just through a job board posting?
Right. So when I graduated, I remember one of my professors, I can't even remember her name, but I can see her face. She just cared so much about me. And she was like, Bianca, when you graduate, here are a list of companies that you should consider. And so the Kane County State's Attorney's Office, they were on there. So I just Googled them, and I saw that they had posted something on their website, and I made the application, and I got it.
So when you see Kane County State's Attorney, are you intimidated by the title? Because I'm thinking in terms of myself, I don't know if I would want to apply for the Kane County State's Attorney's Office. I don't know if the sociology major would cut it in terms of being considered.
Sure.
What is the self-talk for that?
I wasn't scared because I wasn't sure what they did, to be quite honest. I didn't know what the state's attorney's office really did. It wasn't until I became a victim advocate that I was like, I see. There's different type of lawyers. They were prosecutors. They were prosecuting the cases that occurred in Kane County. And then you had your defense attorneys, but that wasn't all. There was all these different types of attorneys that were involved. But it's funny, I wasn't afraid. I just saw a position there where I would be appointed to help victims of violent crimes get through the criminal justice system. And with sociology, there is a criminal justice aspect to it.
Yeah.
So I felt confident that I could do that. I knew the court process well enough that I thought, and anything else that I didn't, I felt I could learn along the way.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate to have that position, because that position is what sparked the fire in me. Like, oh, here's your purpose, Bianca. Being a victim advocate, I got to sit in court and watch trials, right? Because the victims of the crimes, they wanted to be there, and they had every right to be there. So we would watch trials, hearings, bond calls, all that type of stuff. And I got to sit with them and explain to them, this is where we're at in the process. This is what's happening next. If A happens, we'll probably go to B, but sometimes we have to go to C. So I was lucky, right, to get that experience. But in watching all those trial attorneys, that's when I really realized, here's your purpose, Bianca. You have to go to law school. It's great to have this voice, but you need a bigger voice. You need a bigger voice for your community.
And then you went to NIU for law school.
Yeah. So going to law school was also a scary thing, right? Because I was the first person in my family that had ever graduated with a bachelor's degree. And so now the thought of postgraduate, that's even harder, right? How do I get in there? What do I need? And so I was lucky, right? Because I'm like, who do I go to? I was working for the Kane County State's Attorney's Office, largest law firm in Kane County. There was plenty of people that I could ask. And so I confided in a supervisor, and he looked at me like, why are you so worried about this? Just go.
What did you say to him?
I told him, I said, listen, I'm crying. If he were here today, he would tell you every time Bianca had a problem, she would come in, ask if she could close the door, and then start crying. Because there are some things, if you ask anybody to say one thing about me, is that she's extremely passionate. And that's the thing, is that I knew I was passionate about becoming a trial attorney. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be a trial attorney. I wanted to argue in front of the jury. That was my goal. And would look at me, and he was like, you want to go to law school? And I'm like, I do.
Was there a little bit of doubt?
Yes.
In terms of your ability to achieve that, or funding or connections?
Absolutely. I wasn't so worried about the funding, because I thought I'll just take out student loans. I was fortunate enough that my dad was able to pay for my undergrad degree. So I didn't have student loans at that time. And that goes back to what I was telling you about not knowing the sacrifices growing up. Yeah. If we were hurting for money, I didn't know it. My parents didn't let us feel that. And so I asked them recently, it wasn't until after I got appointed as a judge, and I'm like, how did you pay for my school?
Yeah.
How did you do it? He said, for you, because I saw what you were going to be, and I saw the potential in you. I started saving for you. That meant that he didn't get the things that he wanted.
Yeah.
That meant he drove his car 5 years longer than he should have, so that he could keep putting away for my school. Those are the sacrifices that I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. You stop being selfish and you look for your kids, right? And you see the potential in them and what they can be. That's what I meant. My parents made those sacrifices for all three of us. But going back to the law school thing, yeah, I felt like, cut this part out. I did think to myself, am I smart enough to do this? You got yourself through undergrad. Maybe that was easy compared to law school. I mean, people would tell me it is going to be hard, but you can do it. And I thought to myself, you can do it. You have to rely on those three core values. Be dedicated, be determined, and work hard those 3 years, and you'll get yourself through there. And I did. And it wasn't without the support of my family and of the state's attorney's office. I relied on them. In law school, you're talking about connection. It was hard. I was one of 6 out of 110 students that were Latino. The 110 students were split up in section 1 and 2. And so out of the 6 Latino students, I had 2, and then there was the rest in the other section.
Okay.
So, they connected with each other in their section, and I tried to connect with the two that were in mine. But, you'd walk into class and everyone's like, my dad, he's got his own law firm, or my aunt's a lawyer. So they had those people who could guide them. And I didn't have that. But like I said, I had my family who just kept giving me the courage and the support that I needed.
Going back to when you had that conversation with the attorney, how did you know that was the person that you could confide in? So I'm thinking about someone else who's in that same position. Maybe they're working in a position and they know they want to achieve and aspire higher, but they don't have the connections. They don't know who to talk to. What are some of those basic qualities of that person that was in front of you that let you know I can trust this person? And not only that, but they're probably going to help propel me.
Mm-hmm. So he was a person that, as a victim advocate, when the victims of violent crimes, those are mostly, your higher profile type cases. And I had worked with him on a number of cases before. And anytime I had a question, he was always there to answer it. And so in answering those questions, I'm learning the process. I'm learning how you would apply the law to these types of facts and why this might go our way, might not go our way. So I had that connection with him. Mm-hmm. Spending that time gave me the confidence, not being bothered by my questions, willing to help me, gave me the courage to ask him, because I knew he would guide me. And he didn't mince words. He wasn't going to sit here and fluff you up if you did something wrong. He gave you the cold, hard truth about things. And that's, I felt, if someone's going to say or think that I don't have the potential to do this, he's going to tell me this isn't for you. Maybe consider something else. But no, he was like, go to law school then.
Do it.
You can do it. And I walked out of there like, yeah, I can do this.
And you did.
I did.
You applied, you took your LSAT,
Mm-hmm.
applied, got in. Mm-hmm. And then you're now part of an elite group of students taking elite classes. I mean, we're talking logic, reasoning. You have to understand the Constitution, know laws. How do you prepare your mind to work and function at that level?
That took a lot of dedication, and to pull myself away from the things that I used to enjoy, spending time with my friends, hanging out with my now husband, 3 or 4 times a week turned into, I'll see you Saturday night for 4 hours. And that's it. We would talk on the phone on my way home from school. And then that was it. It was very condensed, where I spent the majority of my time studying. And again, going back to that noise that still drives you, even though you hear it and you want to suppress it. I had a pamphlet put in my mailbox in law school, and the pamphlet was completely dedicated to, and this is not what it was titled, but it was like, why minorities don't pass the bar exam and fail out of law school. And I'm sitting here reading the statistics, and that put panic in me, because I thought, wait a minute, we don't make it? We don't pass the bar exam on the first try? And that gave me even more motivation. Like, Bianca, you're kicking it into overdrive. You need to kick it into overdrive. So I spent a lot of time in the law library by myself. And I only made friends with like 2 or 3 people, because I didn't have time for the social aspect of law school. I was so afraid of being the statistic that I wanted to make sure I did everything I could that I wouldn't be that person.
Mm. What were some of those reasons in the pamphlet of why Latinos don't pass the bar on their first, try, or become a lawyer? What are some of those stopping blocks?
It was all about the resources and the life experience, the prior life experiences, and the support groups. Traditionally, there's not a lot of Latino lawyers. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of other minority lawyers out there. Even women were put in that. I mean, if you think about the structures of some of the best law firms that are functioning here, look at the top. Look at the people that traditionally hold those spots. It's not people that look like me. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you see things like that, you think, this is where you start cutting out, right? This is where my dream's going to end, because I can never attain that. And that was something that, after I got appointed, really started dissipating in my mind, because I thought to myself, I never thought that I could be in this position. And here I am, which now I hope when people look in my community, look at me and say, she did it. I can do it too. There was a saying that I came across after I got appointed that said, if you can see it, you can be it. And if you don't see it, then you be it. And I thought, wow. And this applies to a lot of situations. A lot of people in our community that maybe don't see that they're represented in certain fields. Hey man, if you don't see it, then you do it. You be the first. And then when you become that person, you pull your people with you. The overarching policy is qualified, right? You have to be qualified to do the job and not just pull people that look like you, because it's not just about diversifying. It's about including people.
Yeah.
Right. So people say, so you got the appointment because you're Mexican or because you're Latina? No, I got appointed because I was the most qualified person. There were other diverse candidates that the Supreme Court was considering, and I was the one that they selected, the most qualified.
Does that ever bother you, kind of that association of, is it because I'm Latina, or are we using the Latina plug too much in a way that diminishes the hard work and the qualifications that you bring?
I think that if maybe that thought would creep in my head if I was the only diverse candidate, but the fact that there were others made me feel like this wasn't just like a charity case where people try to make you feel that way. Like, we'll just give it to the minority today. No, I mean, the Supreme Court's not going to let that happen. They're not going to put someone who's not qualified to be sitting on a bench in Kane County. It's not going to happen because we trust you, right? We trust that you are smart enough to find, if you don't know the answer, you're going to find it. That you're hardworking enough that if there's a situation that you're not well versed in, you're going to get yourself up to par, that you know how to run a courtroom, that you are ethical, that you have the integrity, that you have the skill set, that you listen. I mean, these are things that you can't just say, we'll just give it to any random person. There wouldn't be such a heavy vetting process if we could just look at someone and say, well, she's Mexican, I'll give it to her. It doesn't work that way.
And the fact that you're able to achieve to this level and then now serve as a model of inclusion, as a model of aspiration is a great thing, because it does open that door and it does show a new face to what your position can be, what it looks like. I think that's a great thing. What do your parents say now?
So my dad is so incredibly proud. I mean, anybody who's willing to listen, he will tell everybody about who his daughter is. So, I mean, and that's how my dad's always been, so proud of his children. My mother passed away in 2016, so she's not around to see, but I know she's watching. But my mother was the type of person that she would just tell you, if something great happened, I'm proud of you, right? And then she'd give you like, and I bought you these earrings. But then, after she passed away, I was looking through her phone and she had all these articles in the newspaper where I was mentioned when I was prosecuting cases. And that's how I knew that she was proud. Like, I already knew she was proud of me, but like my mom, unfortunately, because of the way that she was raised, didn't show affection as much as I would like her to. But that meant everything to me. That's how I knew, that she was proud of me, by seeing those things.
I heard you speaking at North Central College and with Judge Cruz, and there was a moment where you mentioned her words. I don't know if they were words of affirmation, but she left you words of guidance. And that's a way that she was able to kind of be with you and steer you when you were younger. And that played at that voice that would drown out the noise of everyone around you.
Right.
Could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So when I was studying for the bar exam, I was having a really hard time. I mean, it was probably one of the worst times that I went through academically, because it got to a point where I felt like I couldn't even be left alone in the house, because all I would do was just panic. There's an enormous amount of pressure that comes along with being the first, right? So you're the first to graduate undergrad and to get your bachelor's degree, and now you're getting a law degree. But what if I fail? what if I don't pass? I mean, there's this pressure that I was putting on myself. No one else was telling me, if you fail, you're out of the family.
Right.
But it was me.
Yeah.
And so I remember talking to my mom and telling her, like, I'm having such a hard time. I don't know if I can do this. And she gave me a hug and she was, kissed me on the head and said, you got this. You're good, Bianca. Don't let this, bring you down. Tienes el ánimo, like, give you the strength to do this. And then the next day she came in and she just wrote me a card. She was very notorious for not handing you the card directly. She would put it in the mailbox, not like she stamped it, but she just would put like Bianca Camargo and then in the mailbox, and then you'd grab it in from the mailbox, like when you brought in the mail. And I remember.
So she would place it into the mail, but it not get mailed. It would just.
Right. Like she wouldn't put a stamp on it or anything, just like, when the mail was
Why
sitting
didn't she just
there.
leave it on the table?
These are the little things that my mother would do, right? That's like her little step.
That's cute though. That's like an extra
Yeah.
effort. I would appreciate that stuff.
It was. It was just like, I want you to be surprised that something came in the mail for you,
Aw.
So I opened it and it was just a card, and it talked about, it was a religious aspect to it, but also like a strength aspect to it. And she just signed it, "Love, Mom." And I carried that card with me every single day from that time that I got it to the time that I took the bar exam. And I took it with me to Chicago when we were going to take the bar exam, and I would read it on the days that I felt weak. On the days where I felt I couldn't do this, I'd pull that card out and I would read it and read it and read it. And it gave me the strength to keep going, and I still have that card with me. I still have it. And I pulled it out the other day after North Central, actually, and I read it again. And it just, is it anything special? It's special because my mother gave it to me and because she believed what was written in there about me.
Yeah.
And that's why I keep it. And those were the things that my mother did. She showed love in a different way, but she loved us to death.
And there's a lot of people that can relate. There's people who show love differently, and they're not always the warm, affirming type.
Right.
And I remember that story that you shared and how much it meant to you. I similarly value words.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, almost more than a gift or anything else, I keep I surround myself with words everywhere just because they mean something, but also the person who gives it is especially coming from your mom. I can imagine what kind of boost that gives you. And you kind of need that in order to drown out everything else that's coming at you.
Right.
I thought that was very special, very touching. So moving on, you're finished law school, you become a lawyer, and then you become a prosecuting lawyer. What was that time like?
I really enjoyed being a prosecutor. People have told me, being a prosecutor, that's going to hurt you. I don't look at it that way. I look at it that in those 10 plus years, I was doing something for my community. Mm-hmm. I was making sure that our communities were safe. I was making sure that the people that needed help, that found themselves in the criminal justice system, got that help. There was a situation one time, and I'll never forget this. It was a case where this individual was overdosing, and there's certain statutes that if you're overdosing and you call for help, you don't get charged, that type of thing. But he got charged. And I remember telling the defense attorney, if you get him the help that he needs, we'll dismiss the charges. He was like, well, you're going to dismiss the charges anyways because you shouldn't have charged him. I get that. But this was a situation where we were trying to help somebody so they don't overdose. They were overdosing when they called or when someone called on their behalf. This is the type of situation that I'm talking about, where we were not just there to prosecute people and convict people. I was lucky to work under leadership that looked at the bigger picture. There is someone who has found themselves in this position. What can we do to help them? If it's a situation where someone made a really silly mistake, can it be reduced down to a misdemeanor? Can we put them in a diversion program? If it's someone who has substance abuse issues, can we put them in a drug treatment program? Can we put, someone who has mental health issues, can we put them in a program? That was like step one. Mm-hmm. Step two, if none of that applies, then what do we do? And this is a balancing, right? You want to help your community if they're struggling, but you also want to help the victims of the crimes to get to a position where they feel like there has been justice that's been served. Mm-hmm. There are certain cases you can't do anything about, like murder. There's not a diversion program for murder,
Right.
obviously, but there is a situation where you would consider all aspects, and then, obviously considering the victims in those crimes and the victims' families in those crimes. But I found being a prosecutor to be extremely satisfying because I felt like every day I was working for my community and doing what's best for my community. And in that position, I spent so much time, and I was happy to do it. I would work late. I'd come in on the weekends because I wanted to be the best. Mm-hmm. When I walked in that courtroom and we were doing a trial, I wanted the victim's family or the victims to see I'm doing everything I can for you to make sure that you feel like justice was served in your case. And I didn't want to let them down at all. There were cases where we had, like sexual assault cases where the children are victims. Like those were the cases you take the hardest, right? Because they're so innocent and these children have gone through something traumatic, and, you want to make sure that you do right by them. But that position gave me the values that I know are going to make me a good judge, to follow the law, to be fair, right? To listen and to be just, give what's right in this situation. I understand that maybe this person deserves to go to prison, but maybe there's something else going on that has never been addressed. You'd be surprised how many people have gone through the criminal justice system, people that have like substance abuse, and their fourth go around and they've never had substance abuse treatment. Yeah. Maybe it's time for that,
I think that too makes you such a well-rounded person and judge, right? Because you've had, whether you had the experiences or not, you've been around those who've had those certain experiences, and you've tried to help the victims of those experiences. So I feel like you can take that into account when you do your trials and you see both sides of the stories, whether you've experienced it or not. So I think that you're so well-rounded and able to make such good calls and have empathy when it's needed, or mercy when it's needed too. I think that's so powerful.
I mean, I'm not a person who drowns out. There would be times where defense attorneys would say, they're charged with a felony. Is there any way we can get a reduction? And my big thing was send me a mitigation packet. Tell me why this person landed in this position. How did we get here? Are there issues that we need to address? And I would read, a lot of people would say, oh, you don't even read the mitigation. Yeah, I do. I wanted to see those letters. I wanted to see their background, the unofficial background. Yeah, I know their criminal history, but what happened? How did we get here? And that was important to me.
And your recent appointment by the Illinois Supreme Court to your current circuit judge position, one of the phrases that they used was your courage to show mercy when necessary. So not just being a prosecuting attorney or not just looking at the law flatly,
right,
but also being able to take case by case and understanding the individuals and the larger picture. And thankfully, like you said, you had good leadership to be able to show you what good looks like in that realm.
Right.
But let's talk about that a little bit, about how do you show mercy without bringing in personal bias, but still allowing the law to be applied fairly and equally to people?
So there have been certain situations where, individuals, for example, say they don't have a valid driver's license, so they get this driving while license suspended cases. As a prosecutor, I never understood the process. I would always just think to myself, why don't they just get their driver's license valid? Like, do what you have to do and get it done. What I've learned as a sitting judge now, and I'm hearing more, there are reinstatement fees. There are driving tests that need to be paid. There's proof of residency, those types of things that I've never really considered. And that's just a small list. Mm-hmm. The list is endless of things that people have to do to get their driver's license reinstated. Now, what I say when I see this type of charge, I always tell them, you can talk to the state right now and you can get an offer, which is going to be on a Class A misdemeanor that has certain ranges, the maximum being 364 days in the Kane County jail and up to a $2,500 fine. That's the maximum. Or I will give you all the time that you need to get your driver's license reinstated. Because if they get their license reinstated, usually what the state does is they reduce those down to a petty offense. Mm-hmm. So it's just fines only. So my position is, I don't want you to get a Class A misdemeanor, even if you get supervision on it. But that's a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
Versus traffic petty, I would rather see them in that situation. So I will, and it takes time. There's cases that I've seen that, it started in 2019 and we just resolved them last week. But I'm so proud of those people.
Yeah.
And I tell them, really, really good job on getting your driver's license back. I'm proud of you because it's not easy. And as a prosecutor, I didn't understand the process. I was just like, why didn't you just get your driver's license? But now I see that and I can, the mercy is not saying, well, we're setting it for trial.
Right.
Or you need to resolve this case now. I will give you the time that you need. Do we want to see 2019 cases on our docket in 2021, 2022? No. I also don't think that it's fair when they're making efforts to try to get their driver's license back.
Right.
In addition, it is traffic court. So it's, a situation where people are either getting supervision or convictions and fines. I will do everything that I can to work with individuals. Like I talked about at North Central, the pandemic is still affecting people. And when they're so backed up on their things that matter, your mortgage, your food, your other bills that have been neglected because you didn't have a job, when they come in and they tell me, I just started working, I need more time to pay my fines, let's do it. Let's give you more time to do that because I don't want these people to get a conviction. Right. I know how detrimental that could be on their driver's license. And if they're the person that take the kids to school, that do all the grocery shopping, and they don't have their license, now we've affected a group of people.
And then it's not making our community safer.
No,
it's not going to help the community
Right.
as a whole
Right.
in that way.
Right.
It's great that you're able to look at it from that larger perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and another thing too, is I tell people, just work with me. If you owe $356.50, let's do a 6-month extension. Every month, send a $25 payment, a $50 payment. Show me that you're making payments. And if you show me that at that 6-month period, if you're not done, we'll kick it out again. But little by little, we'll get it done. We'll get it done.
What about the Latino community, or not even Latino, let's say underprivileged, let's say those with lower socioeconomic status or money, let's put money.
Okay.
What does representation look like for them, and how can the law be applied for them as equal and just?
So-
Do you see discrepancy?
I see discrepancy with the traffic cases because a lot of them, when they're petty offenses, are not eligible for the appointment of the public defender. And then they don't have the money to hire their own
Why aren't they eligible?
because there's no possibility of jail time. And so when it's a fine only, they're not eligible for the public defender.
Oh.
And so they either have to hire their own attorney or they have to negotiate on their own behalf.
Yeah. Or they don't pay the fees and then they just keep accruing.
Well, the fees, as long as they don't send them to collection, that amount will stay the same. So that's why I don't want that to happen to people either, where I say, well, you can take a conviction and we can send the fines to collections. The interest rate on those collections is super high. I don't want anybody to do that.
Is that a normal process, or is that something that you just do?
What?
Don't send the fees to collections.
That's something that I don't offer in my courtroom.
But can other people, other judges do?
Mm-hmm. And I don't do it. I don't give them that option because I don't want them to take
Right.
that option. I don't think it's the best option.
Yeah.
The best option is to give you more time to pay the fines and costs. And again, you are going to be on supervision for those extended 6 months, but at least, you did 12 months without getting into trouble. What's another 6 months,
Yeah.
And as long as you can pay the fines off, no conviction will enter and we don't get to the collection part of it. So I don't offer it to people.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm glad you don't.
Well, because sometimes I think people don't understand. Oh, I'll just take a conviction. Yeah. And then your fines are going to collections and $300 turns into $1,000 like that,
I mean, I know a lot of people, especially in college, in college, you just park on the street or you and you rack up parking fines. Yeah. So many people get caught up with fees, traffic fees, and then they accrue. And all of a sudden you lose your license. You go to jail. You can't even bail out of jail if you can't afford the fees. Yep. This is like cyclical.
Yep. But see, that's how people get jammed up, right?
Yes.
They don't pay their fines. They start collecting. I had a guy the other day tell me I owe $6,000. And I looked at him, I'm like, how will you ever pay that off? Who has $6,000 to just send to the Secretary of State? When that guy told me that, I was like, oh my God, I got so bummed. And I said, well, you tell me, what do you want to do? You want time to pay that off? I'll give you the time. Or do you want to talk to the state about an offer? And he was like, I want more time if you'll give it to me. And I was like, I'll give you all the time.
Working to just pay off the 6,000, and you're not able to invest at that point.
Right.
You're not able to, pay for your son's college.
Yep.
You're
Yes.
paying off fines,
Right.
fees.
Yep.
I think those little nuances make all the difference of why good elected judges make a huge difference in the community.
Right.
As a whole. Let's talk about the Latino community and the way that you're able to serve and use your background as a Latina to help them specifically, because that is important. You do represent and are able to connect with them, whether it's speaking native language or helping them understand and interpret the law. Talk about that a little bit.
So with what I see with my Latino community is, they come in and they're terrified. Mostly because they're there probably for the first time, but also they don't speak the language. And so what I like to do is we do have an interpreter in court, and sometimes I have to use them. For example, like for bench trials, when there's other parties involved, obviously the other parties need to know what's being said. But when it's just one-on-one and we're going through a plea or we're looking for more time to complete some terms, I speak to them in Spanish. And you can automatically see, I call their names up, and, if it's like Camargo, I say, Bianca Camargo, and they'll come up and they'll be like, and they'll just look at me and I'm like, buenos días, señor, ¿cómo está? And they are, all, you can see it. You can see that they relax and they're like, ¿hablas español? Which kind of, I'm like, do I not look like I speak Spanish? But I say, oh, sí, aquí para servirle. And is my Spanish perfect? No. But I will tell you that people appreciate that you're trying. If they have questions, that you'll try to answer them the best that you can. Mm-hmm. And so once they see that, they kind of trust you. Like, it's like, again, like you can see it in their body language. Their shoulders go down. They're a little bit more relaxed. They start telling you what they need, right? And I will tell you, the majority of my Latino community are getting tickets for no valid driver's license, and you'll see that a lot of them are going through the process of becoming citizens. Some of them are right on the cusp of becoming a citizen or haven't even started that process. And again, why do circuit judges who are diverse, why does it matter? Here it is. I understand that. I understand your realities. I personally haven't lived that reality, but I know my family members have. I have family members who are going through that process, who have been through that process. And so I know that takes time. Becoming a citizen, that's not easy. Mm-hmm. And so do they need time to get that process started, to provide certain documents to the Secretary of State so they can get their license? Yes. Mm-hmm. Am I going to give you the time to do that? You better believe it. And somebody might think, well, you're jamming up the court call. I'm not, because we are resolving so many cases daily, weekly. So the little cases that I'm continuing for that purpose, we're still resolving so many other cases. So it balances out. Mm-hmm. I'm not jamming up the court calls. My court calls are not heavy. We're strategic about when we put them. There's a cap that I have, over 180 cases is not a number I'd like to see. I don't like to see 250 cases on the call because it's a long morning for people. But things like that, that's how I can connect with my community. That's how I can let them know there's someone on the bench who understands you, mm-hmm. who hears you and connects with you. And that's huge.
And it's not a small number. I think what it is, the 16th district has a much larger Latino community than before by roughly 30%.
Yep.
So growing number, and it's a demographic that you're aptly prepared to serve mm-hmm. and help just as much as everybody else.
Right.
And that's, I think, the purpose mm-hmm. is just as much as you can serve everybody else, just as proficiently.
Mm-hmm. So because of COVID and we stopped doing jury trials, it got really quiet up here. And I started thinking to myself, is there some other type of law that I should be practicing? Should I branch out, widen my tool set? And just as I was thinking those things, an attorney from Kane County came knocking on the door and was like, hey, we're interested in you. If you're willing, we'd like to interview you. And, you know, it was a new area of law, and I was nervous, right? Because you're leaving something that you've known for the last 10 years. And I don't want to say you've mastered it, because you've never mastered being a lawyer. If you ever think you mastered being a lawyer, you're dead wrong, because it's ever evolving, and it's up to you to stay on top of that stuff. But I felt comfortable there. If somebody said, here's a murder case you have to prosecute, okay, let's get started, you know, and here are the stepping stones. Is there something new I need to learn? Let's learn it. But I felt just like I was leaving my home for the last 10 years, but I was also excited. Like, this is a new area of law, and I'm ready for it. And at my going away party, I was approached by someone, and they said, there's going to be a vacancy in Subcircuit 1, which is the subcircuit you live in, and you need to apply for the judge position. And I just, me? Like, is there someone standing behind me? Are you talking to someone else? Like, I just couldn't believe that they would think that I was qualified enough to do it. Again, this doubt. Why? Why? Or in the last 15 years, I've shown them, the people that want me, that I am qualified for it. I've showed them that I'm hardworking, that I'm dedicated, that I'm not just there to seek convictions, that I'm there to listen and to learn and to listen to people. And they all saw those things. And with that, then, you know, they're the ones asking me, make the application.
Have you ever talked to the person who asked you? What did they say? Like, how were they just keeping their eye on you? Were they? Well,
that's the thing, right? You go into all these different courtrooms and you practice in front of all these judges, and you think, you know, they don't think that I'm good, or because they don't tell you, and they're not going to sit there and be like, Bianca, you are amazing.
Yeah.
They don't say those things. They're there to be fair and impartial. If they're telling the prosecutor she's amazing and the defense attorney's sitting there like, what about me? You don't hear what the judges really think about you. Yeah. You know, so you always wonder, do they think that I'm good at this? And, you know, obviously that was the answer.
And so then you were appointed.
So then, you know, you put in the application, and then some of the circuit judges that were already, you know, sitting circuits got a few phone calls. Hey, we have questions about this. Tell us a little bit about this. What about this?
They're vetting you.
Vetting me hard. Vetting me extremely hard.
What kind of questions do they ask you?
You know, what about a situation, you know, like what would happen if you did this, this, and this? What would your response be to that? Or, you know, what if somebody said that, you know, you're too much of a strict prosecutor? And, you know, I would answer those questions, and they, you know, seemed satisfied with those answers. And after the application process, then we all interviewed with Supreme Court Justice, an Illinois Supreme Court Justice, and that was terrifying.
All of them?
Just one.
Just one? Because there's what? How many of them are there?
7.
And then do you know which one you're going to get?
I knew who I was interviewing with, yes.
Okay.
So I went back, you know, I hadn't applied for a job really. I mean, I applied at CASA, but that was kind of a situation where we were just like, it felt like, maybe I'm wrong, that we were just kind of going through the motions. They knew that they wanted to hire me, but this was different. I'm like, oh man, you got to be on your AAAA game.
Yeah.
Because, you know, and I was like, I sweat through my jacket, but he was so nice.
What did you eat for breakfast that morning?
I didn't eat anything. Just like right now, I haven't eaten anything because I didn't want, you know, I'm the type of person, like when we were on trial, ask any trial attorney.
I'm so honored.
No. You know, when you ask any trial attorney, when you're on trial, you don't eat. You cannot afford to get sick.
I'm going to feed you after this.
No,
girl.
do you know what I mean? Like you're sitting there, you're like, oh my gosh, my stomach is rumbling. Like,
so you don't eat. Oh yeah.
I mean, we did a murder trial one time. It was a murder and a solicitation. We were on trial for 2 weeks. I didn't eat I ate dinner, but I wasn't eating breakfast or lunch and all that. And, you know, you think you're just sitting there all day. You're not you're not burning anything. The amount of tension and stress that you have coursing through your body. I lost 15 pounds in those 2 weeks. Oh, I mean, it was great. I gained them all back within a week. Pero, I mean, to kind of outline like how.
Wow. It speaks to the level of like physicality also that your job requires.
Yep.
And even though you're just sitting there and, you know, reading or talking or standing sometimes, it does also take a toll on
and the
body.
listening.
Yeah.
You know, what is the witness saying? Anticipate the next question. You know, this is what I was telling one of the younger prosecutors. We just did a trial and I said, listen, as soon as that defense attorney stood up with that piece of paper, with that police report, you should have objected already. Well, why? Because you knew what he was about to do. He was about to improperly impeach your witness. You have to think 2 steps ahead. And that's hard. That takes a lot of concentration. You know, there's times where I would see defense attorneys and they'd be like, shap, 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 shap. And it's like, you have to try really hard to drown that out because you have to be listening. You have to be anticipating what the next question is going to be. And so that's like mentally draining. And then physically you sit up straight because people are watching you and you know, don't slouch, don't be nasty. Don't sit there with this demeanor that you don't want to be there, you know, because they're watching you. The juries keep such a close eye on the attorneys. I did another murder trial with my mentor, my little supervisor that I asked him about law school. It was
What's his name?
Greg Sams.
Greg Sams.
Yeah, but he was one of many. I mean, I was so fortunate. I mean, Greg Sams, Kelly Orland, and Vince Coyle, they were my go-to people.
What did they each do for you?
So-
Well, Greg Sams, we know.
And then Kelly really took me under her wing. You know, she was the one that gave me some experiences that other attorneys didn't have. You know, you want to go shooting with the police to build a rapport with them, I'll set that up for you. You want to be on this solicitation of murder case with, you know, we had 45 witnesses. I'll put you on with me. You know, and I was a misdemeanor ASA when she put me on to do this felony murder and solicitation case. And I was a 3rd chair. So every trial has to have a 1st chair and a 2nd chair, but I was a 3rd chair. There were so many witnesses, but I was so proud to
Wait,
have
what's the first chair, second chair, third chair?
Sorry. So the 1st chair is the person who's running the trial, so to speak. And then your 2nd chair is like your support team, right? And that's where that's where Vince Coyle came in. He was my favorite 2nd chair because we balanced each other out really well. I was very passionate. I would get very, you know, heated in my arguments, and Vince was very calm and cool. And so you needed that. When I would get hype, you know, outside the presence of the jury about things, he'd be like, why don't you go take a walk? It looks like you need a walk. And then we'll talk about this. You know, it's like he kept me grounded when I was like floating around and going crazy, you know. Those people really shaped my career and they kept me focused, and they were the people that I would say, I got this case coming up. This is the argument I want to make. What do you think? You know, and you know, the one thing that Kelly Orland has always taught me, your words are important. Your words have ramifications. Use your words wisely, you know, and that hits, right? Because when you're making arguments to the jury, your words matter. It's one thing to say it this way and it's just like, okay. It's another to like say something with such an impact that people are like, ooh, you know? And so, you know, those were just a few of the people that I had in that office that really like looked out for me. And
it's great. I always think people need like 3 roles or 3 types of people to help them develop. One is the coach, like that everyday person who can help kind of guide you. It sounds like the 2nd chair was really that person who balanced you out. He knew kind of where you were at, what you needed, and how to compliment you.
Yep.
And then everybody needs a mentor, someone they aspire to be, who's doing what they want to do. And maybe you're not at that level, but they can kind of guide you through that process. And it sounds like that first attorney who you confided in about wanting to go to law school served that role similarly. And then a sponsor, someone who will speak your name when you're not in the room, who will open doors for you when you can't open doors or make those connections happen. And it seems like those 3 people each played their roles almost to perfection for you. Because without that, do you think you would be in the same position?
Probably not. But I was lucky that they took an interest in me and I took an interest in them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So Kelly to me was someone who there was not a lot of female supervisors, and she was the head of the drug unit, and it still is the head of the drug unit. And that's a male dominated unit. You're working mostly with men, with police officers who she was able to connect with them and have a relationship with them where they trusted her. I mean, they trust her. They go to her for advice on cases. She's well-versed in search and seizure, 4th Amendment law. Like, she's a superstar, right? And so people rely on her. And I see that and I think to myself, again, I see it. there's a female supervisor in this office. Now we have others, but when I was coming up as a younger ASA, she was the one. And then we also had the first chair who was the first chair in that office. So it was like the state's attorney, Joe McMahon. And then the first assistant was Jody Gleason, who now is a judge in Kendall County. But I was able to see them, and they were strong, assertive, powerful women. And again, that's something that you see, and those are qualities that you want to emulate, because you also want to be a heavy hitter prosecutor. You want to be a heavy hitter trial attorney, you know. And then Greg was just always my person that if I felt like I was going to, pass out, can I come in? And then I'd close the door. Greg. When I told him I was leaving, I went into his office and I said, Greg, can I close the door? And he said, yes. I closed the door and he was like, please don't tell me you're quitting. I am. And it was hard for me because, yes, I had been a prosecutor for 10 plus years, but I had also been a victim advocate in that office. And he had been one of the people that was there from day one to the time that I left. So that was hard. Yeah. Because that was like a 15-year relationship that I've had.
You guys still keep in touch?
Sometimes, yeah. It's hard. I will tell you, being a judge, it's hard, right? Because you have to cut some of these relationships out, because if they appear before you, you want to be fair and impartial. And so sometimes you have to cut certain relationships or keep them at a minimum or kind of surface level. There's certain people that I'd have to recuse myself, Vince and Kelly. And I just, we are friends outside of work. So those are probably people that I will not take cases from, which is a proper thing to do.
Right.
Being from Aurora, there are a lot of people that I know, and many of them have come before me, and I make the disclosure, state, I know this person from way back when. I can recuse myself if you want me to, but I want you to know that there's that relationship, and usually it's just a plea, and so we just put it forward. It's already been negotiated. I'm not part of those pleas. The sentencing is set, or the terms of the sentence it's already set in stone, and I'm not involved in that.
It's the disclosure that is important in those situations.
Yeah,
saying, I recognize there is a connection. It may not be a relevant or a new connection or a meaningful one, but this is the connection, and let's move on.
Yep.
Let's talk about your campaign now and where you want to take this and what you need from those who are listening or watching.
What I need is the votes. That's the most important thing. And I know that sounds so simple, but, people have told me with COVID, things are changing. Your March primary is now in June, at the end of June, when people are not worried about politics or getting ready for
worried about vacation.
Exactly. 4th of July is that weekend. And so they have other things on their mind. So they're, people are,
it's 4th of July weekend is the voting.
It's June 28th.
June, right before. Yeah.
Right before. Yeah.
Wow.
So, people are saying it's going to be low voter turnout, and you have to worry about people not showing to the polls. But I think that there's a way that we have to look at that and get people excited. What would motivate someone to want to go vote, to stand in line, to take time out of their day to vote? And, I know people think, well, the judiciary races, they don't matter. They do matter. They absolutely do matter. So yes, I was appointed unanimously by the Illinois Supreme Court for this position. Now we got to keep me here. We have to keep me here. And you think, well, why? Because I'm one, if you look at those 14 circuit judges, I'm one of 3 that are Hispanic, but I'm only one of 3 women also. So if you pull that out, that's a small amount of people that is a true representation of our community. And then, then people argue, well, you have your associate judges that are diverse. Okay. There's diversity, and then there's inclusion. Do we have diverse judges on the Kane County judiciary? Absolutely, we do. Do we need more? Yes. Diversity is part 1. Part 2 is the inclusion part of it. So diversity is being asked to come to the dance, right? I heard this analogy and I thought this is great. It's being asked to come to the dance. Being included is being asked to dance. Okay. So now, do we have numbers that represent our community? Yes. But do we have people that are in a position to change policy, to change procedure, to put other associate judges that look like a representation of the community on the bench? That's what we need. And that's what we have to keep by retaining the seat. In this position as a circuit judge, I'll have the power to make policy and procedure with the other circuit judges, the right to vote. I get a vote on who the next associate judges will be. When I'm considering a candidate, if they're a diverse candidate and other judges might not be, convinced because maybe there was something in their upbringing that they don't understand, or some lull in their college career, maybe that did they have to drop out because they had to help their family with finances and then they had to pick up again? Things like that I can relate to those realities, that I can convince the other circuit judges this is a qualified, because qualified always matters, a qualified candidate that we should really be considering for these reasons. So this is a situation where, people think it doesn't matter that, you're a circuit judge or no one really cares about the judiciary races. You should care. You should care because you want a diverse and included judiciary. That's what you want. Because when you walk into a courtroom, you want to see people that look like you. You want to see people that understand your realities and connect with you. In addition, you get tried by a jury of your peers, right? If you have a jury trial. If you have a bench trial, which is only before a judge, don't you want diverse judges that are listening to your case? So it's not just a situation where, people are like, well, no one really cares about the judges. Again, you should. The community should be involved in this. There are consequences, real consequences to not voting, to not exercising your right to vote. When you don't vote, bad things happen. And maybe people that are not qualified get in. And that's the situation as a community that we don't want to look forward to.
What are some of the pillars of your campaign?
That's one of the things that people ask me, what is your thing? What are you running on? I don't have a thing. I can't tell you when I have these types of cases before me, this is how I would rule. You don't want that. You want me to always be fair and impartial, to listen to the facts of the case and to apply the law to the case. Every case is specific. It's unique. You don't want a situation where you're going to have a judge that, if you put these facts in front of her, she's always going to rule this way.
Yeah.
You don't want that because it should always be a case by case basis. So that's what I can promise to my community, that I'm always going to be fair and impartial, that I'm going to follow the law, and that I'm going to listen. I hear you. Because that's what people want, right? That's another thing too that I really am working towards. Right now, we're in a bad state of affairs where people don't trust the criminal justice system. And it's not just police, it's trickling up. They don't trust anybody. And what I do in my courtroom every single day is I tell them, my closing line always is, the most important thing to me in this courtroom is that you're treated fairly and with respect. And not just me. You don't just treat me that way. You treat everybody in this courtroom that same way. But to that end, this is your day in court, okay? You have questions? Ask. When you walk out of that door, I want you to know everything that you are supposed to do. I want you to know the ramifications of your plea. I want you to know the rights that you're waiving. All of these things are important to me that you understand. How many times in the course of my appointment, people pled out in August are now back to see if they fulfilled their sentence. And they say, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. The first time I heard that, I thought, Bianca, you need to change your opening remarks. You need to start telling people, don't leave this courtroom without knowing what you're doing. This is important. And if you don't do it right, then a conviction is going to enter on your record. You don't want that. So now, after I've kind of modified my speech, I have a question. Let's do it. I'm here and I'm not giving legal advice. I can't do that. I'm completely prohibited from doing that, but I'm here to help you and guide you.
And listen
to you.
So what does your typical day look like as a judge?
So being at the Aurora branch court and overseeing traffic and misdemeanors, my call starts at 9:00 and that's the in-person court call. So from 9 to 10:30, it's in person. And during that time frame, I try to help as much as possible. Because I remember being in traffic court as a 16-year-old girl and thinking to myself, We'll be here till noon. I mean, it eats up your whole day. So, you have the city prosecutors that are prosecuting for the city of Aurora, North Aurora, Montgomery, and then you have your state, which is, your Kane County prosecutors, right? And so anything that I can do to try to move the call. So I'll, after my opening remarks, I'll sit down, call people and say, is there anyone who wants to hire an attorney to represent them? If you do, come up to the front row and we get them dates and we kind of let them move on their way. Is there anybody who wants to talk to the Secretary of State about resolving their driver's license? Come up, get them out. So from 9 to 10:30, that's what we're doing. Getting continuances if they want to speak to an attorney or talk to the Secretary of State, but then also taking pleas. Anybody who wants to plead guilty, I go through every plea with the individual. And then from 10:30 to 11:30, that's when we do the Zoom court call. So by 10:30, the courtroom's completely cleared out and we jump on Zoom, which I truly appreciate. I mean, we should have done that a long time ago, but obviously COVID really opened our eyes to that need, because have you ever thought about the people that didn't have transportation or had childcare issues and all these things? Now we can accommodate them, right? Some people don't even take off of work. They're calling in from their job sites, which I'm fine with. I know a lot of people are like, oh, how can you let them, do they're not going to miss a day of work. That's how I'm going to let them do that.
Yeah.
Because
they're
working is more important than, sitting in a courtroom, but they're zooming in, right? They're not missing court. So over Zoom, we also do pleas. Sometimes they'll plea out on Zoom, getting continuances. And then the afternoons are reserved for trials. And so I've conducted at least 15 bench trials. Really enjoy it. The first time I did my trial, I almost objected.
Why?
Because you're so used to it. You hear something, you're like, you're used to being in that, right? And I'm like, Bianca, like I said, and people looked at me and I'm like, I'm sorry, go on. Because it's in your nature. You hear something but now it's, every time that I have a person who is representing themselves for my community, I always tell them, I'm proud of you for taking this step, because most people wouldn't have the courage to do it, and they're doing it. And they're doing...
Do you see that a lot?
Yes. And I appreciate it because they're doing a good job. I tell them, I can't help you. I can't give you the arguments to make. I can't tell you how to lay foundation, but I can give you the procedure. And they hear me. Here's when you make your arguments. Here's when you cross their witnesses, and they understand the process, and they do good work. They ask good questions. And, there's been a few people that I'm like, you should really consider law school. They're young kids, but they're really taking the initiative and the effort to put forward a good case.
Yeah.
And that's exciting, right? You see people that are, wanting to exercise their right to defend themselves, and they're doing good at it.
So what else in terms of your campaign and your strategy going forward that you want people to know?
Well, I want them to know that I'm just, people are like, "Ooh, you're a judge." I'm just Bianca. Those are titles that I hold. Yes, I'm a judge. Yes, I used to be a prosecutor. Yes, I used to be a victim advocate. But at the end of the day, I'm a person that you can relate to, that you can come to. I've in being in my community a little bit more since my appointment, I've encountered so many girls that remind me of me, and I tell them, I went to do vision boards with some of these girls, and one of them put first generation college grad. And I looked at her and I said, when this time comes, come see me, because I want to talk you through this. Because I remember when I saw that, how hard it was for me and how scary it was for me, not knowing what to do. And I want to be there to help her, right? And so I'm not just, I'm a judge, I sit up here. No, I'm still just Bianca. And I'm so grateful that this platform has allowed me to catapult myself even more into this community. It's given me opportunities to be there when girls are doing their vision boards and to chat with them. I'm inspired by them because they're doing great things with a situation that they're still first generation. And they don't have people to show them the ropes, but they're doing it, and they have the courage to do it. And so that's my biggest thing, is that I'm just me. I'm just Bianca, the same person that's been in this community since day one, and nothing's going to change. Win or lose this election, this is my home. This is where I'm raising my son. This is where me and my husband have been for the last, we bought our house in Aurora almost 12 years ago, and we're not going anywhere. Do I have to be professional, and do I have to, maintain civility in the courtroom and make sure it's running efficiently and effectively? Absolutely. But outside of that, I'm still the same person. And that title didn't change me. It will never change me.
And then, but it adds the ability for you to become a coach, mentor, sponsor for girls just like you.
Yes.
And men and boys, right?
Right.
We're inclusive.
Completely. Those, you get a lot of, I say inspiration, but also strength. Yeah. Like when I was doing those vision boards and I see these girls and I'm just like, this was me one day. And I didn't even have this. I didn't have somebody tell me what your goals are. Tell me how are you going to achieve those goals? And I see them and I'm just like, so that inspired me to say, I reached out to the group and I'm like, hey, a lot of the girls talked about wanting to see the court process. Come watch the court process with me. I invite you to come into my courtroom. You can see the morning court calls, stay for the trials. We'll, talk about it over lunch and, things like that. Being invited to environments like that, like me being a victim advocate and getting that opportunity showed me what I really wanted to do. And this opportunity for them, maybe they're like, maybe I want to be a lawyer. Maybe I want to do this now. Sometimes it takes that one person to reroute your entire life.
And it's just one person. All it takes is one person.
One person to believe in you. And I believe in these people that I'm coming across. I mean, I believe in them. I feel that they're going to be something great. Well, there's a girl that I came across and she reminds me of me because she's silly. And I'm silly sometimes. If you ask my family, I like to, bust out and dance in the middle of, family dinner night and, make funny voices and stuff like that. And she's like that. She'll just sit there and she'll start talking in a British accent. And I told her, I said, you have a lot of energy and you're funny. Consider going into theater, and she's like, I could never do that. Why? Why could you never do that? I don't know. I don't know. It's not a reason. Go do it. And I thought to myself, maybe I could take her to a play so she can see. Because I asked her, I said, have you ever been to a play? No. But then I thought, okay, Bianca, calm down. There's really
this is the other side that I think is unlocked is then you are able to have resources.
Right.
It's like the resources component is the enabling component.
Right.
And so now you have more exposure, more ability, more money, probably to spending money to be able to provide experiences that open eyes, open hearts, open minds.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's fulfilling and very, very inspiring. Very inspiring.
What's next for you?
What I really want to do if I do win this election, give back to the people that supported me when I was coming up. Me and my husband talk a lot. What if we won the lottery? What would you do with that money? And here's always my response. I would donate to Wavansi and we would start a scholarship. Same at NIU Law and at Aurora University, because those were the institutions that helped me and my husband get to where we're at right now. And to give back to students that are struggling or don't have the finances to finish their education, that to me is giving back and helping, dándole la mano to the people that need it, like I needed it. That's my number one. I want to start these scholarships and I don't know if I can put ethically, I don't know what I can do, what I can't do, but do I put it in my name? Would that be proper? I put it in my son's name, something. But I want those scholarships out there and I want to help. People are like, oh, you're going to be making all this. It's not about the money to me. You know what? Pre this appointment, I was happy and I didn't have all the money in the world, but I had the things that I needed. And mostly what I needed was just my family, my dad and my sister and my brother, and obviously my husband and my son. That's what I need in my life. Money's nice. Yeah, it's nice, but it doesn't make me. It will never make me.
Bianca, this was an informative, compelling, telling interview. Thank you for sharing your time. Is there anything else that you want to share with those who are listening or watching?
Well, thank you for even giving me this opportunity. I appreciate it, really. And just that I am grateful. I really am grateful and blessed for this appointment because I feel like now it's giving me an opportunity to get to know my community even more, to get them to know me and the type of person that I've been kind of working behind the scenes for them for the last 15 years. And that those experiences are going to make me a judge that they can be proud of. You know, those values that I've carried with me for the last 15 years of being hardworking, of being humble, of understanding that I don't know everything, but I'm willing to learn those things and that I'm here to listen. And at the end of the day, they have to know that the judiciary is there for them. I'm not there for the prosecution. I'm not there for the defense. I'm there for my community to make sure that when they're there and they're standing there, that they get their day in court, whether that's a person who's accused of a crime, a victim of a crime, a witness to a crime. That's who I'm there for, my community. And that's who I'm here to serve. That's what a judge does. And with those values, I'm telling you that I'm going to be and will always be true to those values, which will make me a judge that my county can be proud of.
Proud of you. Proud of you. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to Tuesdays with Andrea. There are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and I appreciate you making the time to listen to mine. If you like this show and want to know more, check out TuesdaysWithAndrea.com, or please leave a review on iTunes or drop a line in the YouTube comments section. Until next time, please stay kind in your mind, nice on the web, and stay hella hopeful in your heart.